Good evening and afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Lorton Study Task Force, Monday, June the 5th. So happy June. Today. We are being recorded, and I'd like to take a few moments just to go around the room and introduce ourselves so we all know who's in the room on the task force. And we'll start with our left.
Thank you. I'm Christine Bourne, Supervisor of Storage Chief of Staff, also a Lorton resident, and I think all of you know, but I just wanted to mention here quickly that last week our previous planning commissioner, Earl Flanagan, passed away, and he's still in his sleep, so that is good. And you all know Earl's history and all the great and wonderful and multiple lives that he lived, but we do not have any service information yet. When we do, we'll share that. But well, you know me, Lord resident, also South County Federation Vice President.
Supervisor, resident, also Workhouse Art Center, South Fairfax County.
Andrew Brown Anderson, Lorton resident.
And I'm Walter Clark, co-chair of the task force, also planning commissioner, opportunity to follow Earl Flanagan. Very sad to see him go. He's very instrumental and a great mentor to me when taking over this role as planning commissioner, and a wealth of knowledge that he has. So he will sorely be missed, and we'll continue to keep standing in prayer, but as I'm saying, he lived a very long, full, healthy life. And did a lot for this community. So we all have good shoes to try to fill.
I am Nick Burke. I am the current president of the South County Federation. I've been the fund member of also on the board. Also the chair of this house.
I'm Tim Sargent, at large member of the planning division. I had the privilege of serving the borough for a number of years. Before retired from the plan. Remember that smile, but looks at the difficulties. I'm a Fairfax Station, Southern Fairfax Station, South County resident. Forward to continue our great work.
I'm Dale Rumberger. I'm the immediate past president of the South County Federation. I've been a Lorton resident for 34 years. And I'm co-chair of our Parks and Environment Committee on the South County Federation, and also active on the Land Use and Transportation.
I've been with long time as a career. I have learned that not happy or uncomfortable vibes that I had in some of my comments at the last meeting. For that, I apologize. I also, some of the things I said were not sensitive enough to have a long time. Supporter provider last meeting, I apologize for that. Then I like to follow up with you. That's something that I just wanted to know tonight. We've done something very much also. And that is, I said some sarcastic balance. Thank you, Linwood. I appreciate those remarks.
open up to,
Yeah, so. I'm Tom Burke, I'm with the Department of Transportation. I'm very much with the Department of Planning.
You guys speak up just a little bit. I didn't hear, sorry, I didn't hear.
John City Transportation Planner, always planning.
I'm sales slash part of the planning development.
I'm Steve Waller, part of the planning and development team, and I'm serving as the project manager for the Lorton business study for the past 2 years.
Hi, Randy Lara, and development.
Thank you. All right, so we have welcome and 10 out of get spoken for. Thank you. I wanted to address as well. Now, this task force was created by Dennis for the purpose of helping Lorton residents make their community and even better place to live and life. We've had a diverse and balanced set of representatives who not only represent the Lorton community, but members who have shown throughout the years to be working for the best interests of Lorton. That said, the last task force meeting, I remember hugely personally steering the committee to focus on Lorton Road and doing so for my own personal gain versus what was in the best interest of Lorton and the community. He also stated repeatedly it's time for me to come clean on my land holdings as if they were being kept secret from the task force. These accusations were both slanderous and false. As some of you do not know me, I want to take a few minutes to make sure I address those accusations. I've lived in Lorton for almost 30 years. Now, all my 4 children and 12 grandchildren also live in Lorton who are very close by. I've invested in land in Lorton for over 40 years, and few believe in Lorton and continue to do so today. My investments in Lorton are not limited to land, however. For more than 20 years, I was involved with the Lorton Federation and the South County Federation in almost every capacity. I was also involved at the South Fairfax Chamber of Commerce. I was one of the 3 people who started the South Fairfax Chamber of Commerce. Although I have no business in Lorton, and I don't do any business in Lorton, I still believe in Lorton and wanted to have a chamber for the Lorton community. I'm also one of the original founders of the Workhouse Arts Center, and I have spent thousands of my hours on my time and on its board, as well as hundreds of thousands of dollars to ensure the support and the success of this special asset. My wife and I supported LCAC for 30 years. She's been on their board for many years. We've contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars to this organization as well. In fact, we've supported almost every community group and nonprofit there is in Lorton. My community volunteering, committees, charities, groups I've served on, and many personal donations come from my strong belief in giving back to the community. Not once have I ever financially benefited from any committee I've served on. So claiming that my motivations have more to do with personal financial gain and not with the vested interest of the community is not only wrong, it's dishonest. And Linda, you know it. As far as the claim that I've steered the community to Lorton Road, I've been advocating for a town center in Lorton for roughly 15 years. I've formed 2 previous groups to study and determine where it should be placed and what it could look like. And Linda has been on one of those previous committees. And those previous groups have also determined that the best and most logical place is centered somewhere along Lorton Road. So it should be unsurprising that this task force would come to a similar conclusion. In the steering of this committee has largely been of his own efforts. First, to control the contractor's understanding what this committee is looking for, by dominating most every meeting, and then attempting to set lower expectations for a town center than everyone else wants. He's continually brought up red areas or focuses on challenges and impediments, or generally makes them to make success seem unattainable. And to whose benefit? The community has spoken loudly already. They've told us their interest in this concept, and it's the sole reason this task force was created. This claim that we should focus on the center more on Lorton Marketplace or Lorton Station Boulevard instead of Lorton Road is just such an example.
He knows both of these areas have very limited potential for redevelopment. They are both only recently developed and have very dense buildings already on them. And they are both heavily constrained as well. Lorton Station, Lorton Market Boulevard has train tracks on one side and nice townhome development on the other side. And Lorton Station has expensive houses built already on the road in a very tight, dense area. It could not develop and put enough those together without being extraordinarily expensive. What else? What other road besides Lorton Road would be close to I-95, Route 1, PRE, and the future possible metro stop as well as close to the auto train? What other road has a large number of small, single-family homes on large lots that can be easily consolidated and those large home parcels that are currently undeveloped near it as well? As to my ownership of land in Lorton and along Lorton Road, well, it's true that I own, or part owner of a few houses on Lorton Road. I'm one of the largest landowners in Lorton. I own roughly 50 land parcels encompassing hundreds of acres in the Lorton area. However, 95% of my properties are not located along Lorton Road or near the proposed town center. So if I was trying to steer this to properties I own, I didn't do a very good job. As to the statement that it's time for me to disclose my land holdings, this is inflammatory. It's intended to imply that I was hiding something. The time to disclose my land ownership was at the very first meeting we had, in this task force had, and I did. Despite that, you should know that the comprehensive land with the homes that on Lorton Road already support a much higher density. 45 units per acre, 8 to 12, and 12 to 16. The claim that I want to set myself up for even greater density than this in Lorton Vision 2040 is laughable. If I'm still alive, I'll be 90. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense that I'm going to hold out to try to set this up for some van, some piece I can enjoy the money, when I'm 90. I'm not trying to tell you I'm a perfect person. I have many faults. But none of those faults make me care any less than anyone else in this committee about our community, or about ever, or would I ever, sell my community's interest for my own financial gain. I thank you for giving me the patience and the time and attention. Thank you, Tim. Again, I know that the challenge was in the room that we had the other day, there were only a few of us. And both of you don't know me very well, and you may not have been previously disclosed of ownership of a couple of properties in that area, but most everybody else had, and I had disclosed that up front, and I do believe in transparency, and I try to be as transparent as possible.
Thank you very much. All right, so we will get right into the agenda. So tonight there's announcements that we have. This station now shelter set at the end of August. Now we go end of June. July, August.
Signs are up for some of the stores across the street. They've got their permits, so those individual buildings are starting to do their build out, so that's great. I don't know that everybody also knows this, but I think this past weekend, the show shows last weekend is executive director of the Workhouse Art Center. They have an interim director that is a board member that is going to be sitting in until they do their search. So I don't know if you want to say anything.
Rachel, I don't know. She's on our board, and we were very fortunate with Leon Sakarchi that we have somebody who was actually looking for a similar position elsewhere, and when this came about, we turned around and said, hey, would you consider taking over in Bentham? She's very well-spoken, very capable. But yes, we do know there's a few changes. We recognize the town to have a good relationship with Leon, but you know, unfortunately, Leon's also my age, and so as you get approaching 70 people, sometimes like I want to do something different, or may not be able to handle it. It's a big job, so thank you.
And then one of the primary core things we talked about is the ability to bring everything together as a group of work, find kind of a central places. There is one large event like this really wants to hold in Lorton, and that's the July 4th fireworks event. It brings everybody there, and we have set for July 1st, centrally.
Saturday the 1st, right?
Yeah, there'll be on the website shortly, tickets available. I would encourage anybody who's listening to this and hope to see you there.
Yeah, for your family and friends, it's a great spread up blankets and make it big and all. It's really great.
Saturday nights, the Music Nights concert series is currently going on too. And that's every Saturday night at 7:30.
And strangely enough, there is comedy in Lorton. They have comedy show there. It's really, they have a series of various comics. They're all connected up with, and they do all these gatherings, so you really get some good quality acts. It's really good. Very pleasant.
Okay, so we'll move forward with the agenda, and we'll call on staff. We ready for presentation or other announcements from staff.
I think John's ready.
John, you ready?
John, stand up here. So, hello everyone, my name is John King. I am a transportation planner with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. Just to let you know, this is my first time presenting to a community group since the pandemic. So, I'll click my unmute button, which is great. And I'll just go get started. We do have other staff here from Fairfax County Department of Transportation, Tom Berg. There's another planner, Elena Cyrus, who's actually defending her master's thesis tonight. Planner one that she just started with the county, so she's off doing that tonight, bigger and better things. But we did have a planner, Sean Schweitzer, who some of you might have known, that presented several times. I'll cover a brief recap. It's been a while since we've been in front of you all. And he's moved on to another section, still in the department, luckily, he's a great planner, but that's why I'm here tonight, and he's not. Just a quick agenda, what we'd like to talk about tonight with you all, introductions, I already covered those. We'll do a real quick recap. I don't want to dive too much into what has been said at past meetings, but just a quick overview of that. And then my thought was to do a sort of a short transportation planning overview, I was calling it. It's sort of, I don't know how many members of the task force have worked on comprehensive plan amendments before, or done things like that with the county, but my thought was just to kind of do an overview for those that aren't familiar with it. So I'll spend a little bit of time talking about how we do transportation planning in the county, include touching on some elements of the comprehensive plan, the policy plan, the concept of future development, area plans and maps. And then the majority of the presentation tonight, and what I'd really like to do is hopefully have a little bit of discussion, is looking at the community vision statement that you all drafted and adopted, I believe, at the last meeting. And so I just have some thoughts on that. And then at the end, just kind of lay out the next steps, kind of what we're going to do from here in terms of the transportation side of things, give you a rough outline of things we're working on and schedule. Basic agenda. So as I said, we have been, the department has been in front of you all a few times, but it's been a while. Right? It's been a couple of years at this point. Sean presented in April and May of 2021, so that's more than 2 years ago. During the course of this process, numerous transportation comments have been generated. We have a really good log of those. We've looked through them, and one of the thoughts I had when I was looking at your community vision statement was that, to me, in general terms, a lot of those very specific comments have been sort of translated over that vision statement. That's one of the things I'd like to talk about in another section. And then we initiated a transportation assessment We have a consultant on board, HNTB. They started work with us, I believe, in 2021. And then we hit that speed bump where we kind of, on hold, everybody, I don't know the details, but anyway, we put them on pause. They were working again with us on this transportation assessment. We'll cover a little bit of that, but I don't have much of that tonight. That's a work in progress. That's the recap. Okay, so getting into this planning overview concept, basically we have a county's comprehensive plan, which is sort of the guiding document for how we want Fairfax County to grow and be in the future, right? One of the most important elements of that is what we call the county's policy plan. This is county-wide guidance. This guides everything we do within the county. It gives us direction on housing, transportation, and environmental issues, and the whole, everything that the comprehensive plan is intended to cover. We have guidance at the county-wide level. On the transportation side of that, specifically in the policy plan, there are county-wide goals for transportation. There's objectives, there's policies. There's also a system of roadway functional classification. I'm not going to go through exactly what all these things are, but it's basically a log or a list of various elements that go into countywide policy planning, including bicycle trails, roadway, right-of-way requirements, bicycle master plan, which is being updated. When you step down a little bit, but still, sort of at a very high level in terms of Fairfax County, there is a document, the county's concept for future development. This is something that was adopted by the county 20 years ago. 1999. Okay, thank you. It's been we were thinking about this a long time ago in Fairfax. We're growing very fast, right? We've had this boom. We can't keep up, so to speak. So what do? We want to focus our development. This document gives a vision and direction for where that future growth should be, right? So there's a countywide map with a lot of really nice colors and shading and things like that. For areas where the county wants to put new development. It's only about 10% of the overall geographic area of the county. So 90%, we don't really want to do too much there, right? This 10% we want to focus on has essentially, I don't know the details of it, but it's essentially where you're close to transit, you're close to jobs, good access to transportation, school, anything like that. That's where you want to put more people and stuff. So don't just put it everywhere, right? And so in Lorton, to get into that, we're showing this. This is Lorton. Right here you can see the I-95 and Route 1, and that is the Lorton, what we call the Lorton South Route 1 Suburban Center. So it is an area that's targeted for growth, and there is sort of a framework of what a suburban center, should look like. There's also a community business center, and other types of classifications for these areas that have sort of how should they look, how should they feel type of description in this document, right? So there's sort of this guidance as well. We step it down one more level, so to speak. We have area plans within the county. So now we've gone countywide, we have this sort of overarching vision where we want to do development, and then we have these very specific area plans. Which again, Lorton has an area plan. They typically will have, again, more specific recommendations, as you imagine, that countywide policy to that area. And they include key elements which are typically supportive of the broader countywide policies and goals, right? So again, we're trying to support the county as a whole in these small area plans. We do have some visuals to go along with that. There are a whole lot of visuals. I just put up a few with the bigger countywide documents. We have, actually can't see that, but this is a transportation plan map, which covers a lot of the roadway improvements, interchanges, widenings, things like that. We have a bicycle master plan map. We have a trail plan map. And those last two are actually being updated in tandem with what's called the Active Fairfax plan, which they haven't updated in a while. But now that's a process that's ongoing. Been going on for a few years now, and I think the next public outreach for that is going to be in 2024. So it's in the works. Okay, so getting into the good stuff, so to speak. Do you have any questions about that sort of high-level transportation overview?
As Mike mentioned, that we're in the process, in concert with gas initiative, of updating, I should say, the policy plan.
That's right.
So, the timing here is very good. You'll see them incorporate, I'm sure, the board, the county's newest goals, from health equity and other components of it. So, our timing.
Absolutely.
Do you have an approximate release time frame of the update?
I'm going to defer to staff on that, but we've got a lot of work to do. We're literally, for planning commission, we're literally just starting to talk about policy.
High level, we think that the first group of policy planning chapters that would be in the doc works. We're going through the whole policy plan, we think about 12 chapters. We're focusing on land use, transportation, and environment first. We're thinking right now, at least that late 2024 is when those would be first example. A lot of steps before that in terms of scoping, research, look at it before the hearings, of course. That's roughly speaking about a year and a half.
Okay, thank you.
Still a lot of free coffee.
All right. Another question I'll go ahead and get into, like I said, that I think is the meat of the discussion tonight, so to speak, community vision statement. When we're going through and looking at the numerous comments and questions, things like that, that were raised throughout the last several years of this process, and I was kind of concurrently reviewing the community vision statement. I thought, wow, a lot of this stuff is sort of, in general terms, being kind of brought together and put down here. The specifics are not there, obviously, but in general terms, a lot of what is being raised through these this process is now in the community vision statement. So I just wanted to talk to you all about it. After that, there's no order here. I think it's probably out of order in terms of what's on the statement itself. But first one is to utilize the undeveloped open space areas to create like a bed connection between the greater Lorton community, low impact techniques relevant to be utilized in environmentally sensitive areas. So my thought here was, if this is something that folks are interested in, I know with other task forces we've kind of broken off into a small group subcommittee, if you will, or just one or two meetings with folks that are aware of potentially where these improvements could be located and what the issues could be associated with them, and kind of talk to us about that. In that forum, that might be good. Another thing we have, as I mentioned before, is the county is updating its both bicycle master plan and trails plan. And I just did a little clip here of what's on the current trails plan. So there's stuff there that's planned, but that's not on the ground yet. Maybe that covers sufficiently the intent of that statement. Maybe more needs to be done. That's a conversation we'd like to have. And we could have that. We could bring in folks from Active Fairfax, to talk to whoever's interested in it and get those ideas sketched out more clearly. As I mentioned, the next round of public engagement for that Active Fairfax is in 2024. But we could obviously do that as part of this process as well. That's one thought. Next, this is identifying improvements that promote linkages between Lorton's gateways on primary roads and transportation facilities, serving commuters, tourists, and other visitors. So I had a question here, and it was whether, and maybe it's not a if or either or situation, maybe it's both, but is the intent of this to look to improve existing corridors and facilities? Where there are gateways or opportunities, or is it to create new facilities? Where can we potentially make a new connection or make, something new, right? That's what I wasn't clear on myself.
I would think it's both. And as we continue to develop our vision and our plan, that there are connections, facilities that don't exist today that would help.
Certainly, I think from the south, we are kind of favoring Fairfax County. This is your first entrance into really not just Fairfax County, but if you're coming north from south of us,
You know, you've got Washington D.C., Arlington, you know, a lot of destinations that people are going to. And the main entrances into Fairfax County South right now are 1.3, Route 1, and I-95 are your kind of primary entrances. If any of them were to enter, you don't see anything saying welcome to Fairfax County. There's literally, you don't really know where you are. It's one of the things that this committee is you know, where's the center, where's the heart? But first of all, where am I? I don't know, as you enter in there. So, I mean, as you talked about this tearing of the target of the Lorton gateway, you know, it's our three primary gateway communities. You know, the I-95, as you're coming off of it, is rustic. It could do with some love, and the land is available there to do something with it, to delineate kind of where people are going. You know, a lot of signage that would help improve things. I think part of it, the discussions we were having last meeting and the meeting before, it was the meeting before, that we actually were making some fantastic comments. That it's kind of reclaiming our roads from people who are passing through it, or just traversing from one side to the other, and slowing it down, making it kind of a destination for people, where you could feel like when you're walking along, you know, Lorton Road or some of the streets, you're not being passed by people flying by you going somewhere else. Okay.
So here, and a couple things there. Obviously, the slowing traffic down and make it more, you know, comfortable for people that are there to be there. Okay. And also the making the there more aware to everyone that is potentially passing by. Right? We have these gateways that we identify that we're going on Route 1, that are exit to 95, maybe sprucing those up, signage, wayfinding, lighting, landscaping, things like that. But obviously, make a good first impression. Everyone's going to, I want to make a good first impression. Everyone's going to make a good first impression, right? So.
But I also state that when you review the preliminary documents on the residential parking study that is going on right now, while that doesn't specifically affect us right now, any of those kind of documents that would set limits and sizes, et cetera, like that, would have something to do with our looking at our density, population, and how our building recommendations along that. So, you know, some of those things could be very important for us to know, or at least understand some of the pieces of it, to know how it could affect size, space, location, and go along with the fact that wherever BR2 will end up being, that we would like really not to be the place that you come and park your car coming north in order to go someplace else. And since there is still land available and some of those things, developers could look at something like that. Those are real important issues within our community right now. As we look at, it's interesting to see the same transportation overlay we did is very similar to the same area we've been looking at.
Right. So, right. No, that's a good point. So, 1 second, man. The parking, I think it's parking reimagined. That which
yes.
is right. That is an effort being led by Land Development Services, I believe, and I believe it's associated with the zoning ordinance, not the comprehensive plan. Now, I do agree that I'm sure there's some diagrams you might know more than I do about it, but I think for the most part we try and keep our hands out of the parking ordinances in the comp plan. We don't want to have any conflict, so to speak, there. So we would let the zoning ordinance, I believe, folks don't better than I do, but I think we would let the zoning ordinance guide you know, the parking.
Yeah.
So the comprehensive plan amendment, I'm not sure how much we could influence what's being done. I also think it's being done at a countywide level. I believe there might be some area-specific recommendations in there, but for the most part, I think it's going to be a countywide, yeah.
Yeah, just real quick, we have Kathy to the room. We remember we each introduce ourselves, everything before, so you want everyone to know.
Oh, so sorry, it's been one of those days. I know you all have it. My name is Kathy Martin. I live in Lorton Station.
know, I bought sunglasses. And
I was just going to piggyback. What's unique, I think, about Lorton is our transportation. We have these awesome welcome to the National Capital Region, but we also have that Amtrak that brings in all these people. So I'll give an example. Where I live is right near VRE. There's now, the scooters that they have in Arlington. Somebody's got those 10 scooters now, which I think is so cool. So it'd be really nice to connect our core businesses down there that are just struggling to that wealth that's coming into our town every day. And also, the ski resort, I don't know what the potential economic boom could be. I would think that we could get something from that. So looking at that from a future perspective, how do we connect it with scooters and all the things that some of the other areas have?
That makes a lot of sense. I think it goes back to the earlier thing about the gateway. The VRE is certainly a gateway. People, could use that as a point to enter Lorton, right?
And Grant, I'm sorry, Grant had a comment.
Just wanted to respond to something that Jeff brought up regarding parking reimagining. So we are looking at that already because even though it's not, parking is not really dealt with in the comprehensive plan, it is, as John mentioned, it's a zoning ordinance and division. There are linkages though between what we plan for today, not today, but as part of this Lorton initiative, specifically looking at density and assigning a core to Lorton that has implications for what we can do in terms of parking reductions. If we're looking at a higher density core, specifically in areas that are served by transit, right now, I don't want to get too into it in terms of the proper reform bill that was passed in 2016, but our parking reimagining effort is only considering parking reductions for the most part, unless you're in a revitalization area or you're in an area that is exempt from the proper reform bill. Lorton is not currently one of those areas. So there is a linkage between plan and the small area plan that this body is charged with developing and the way it's implemented. And that is that's something that Kate and the Renaissance team, we're going to have future discussions about that very topic because it's critical in being able to set the parking rate in a realistic manner that help vision is critical. Just know we'll be talking about that.
I just want to clarify or highlight one important part. Though we are a hub and an alternative to the traffic for 95 and whatnot, which anytime 95 is backed up, every road in the road gets, then gets backed up. And it's a challenge. I mean, just last Saturday, it was crazy. We were trying to get every spot was all covered. And we would like to try to, as best we can, reclaim some of our roads back to ourselves, as opposed to just making them throughways for everybody else outside the community. So I just want to say that's one of the key pieces of it.
It's absolutely been a hurdle for us all the way through this whole process is the traffic and the traffic in the areas that we want to do things and stuff like that. And to me, it really comes down to the biggest shortcoming besides this 95 quadrant that we talked about before is there's really only one east-west route between Route 1 and 123, which obviously 95 is in the middle of that also, but that's a statement about there's really only one way to get there, and that's Lorton Road, and that's a core key road to our community. So any option, you're talking about new roads or anything like that, that can connect to that east-west to give other options than right through the middle of our community would be great. And I don't have any super good suggestions for that. That's the big challenge. If it was easy, we would have already come up with it. But I absolutely can't think of anything to the north that would work. The only thing I can think of possibly something a little bit further south down around the industrial area, cutting west towards 123 or something like that. So that's hard to come.
So that speaks to that question I had earlier about is it necessarily enhancing existence? It sounds like it's both.
And that's what I intended to insert about the new road.
Yeah.
I think you have 1.3, obviously, to the south. That kind of, yeah, you're going to go down Route 1 and kind of cut over. And you have that Pohick Road to the north, which goes to the north. Yeah, but if you go down to Hoop Road back down that way, you kind of loop around. You know, both of those kind of loop around. I've traveled them frequently. I feel like I know things called shortcuts in the area to let you get around. There's no main through street. But, you know, I think in general, we want people to come down Lorton Road to that center area as long as they're Lorton residents. And I think my personal feeling is those people who are getting off in Lorton or staying or coming down Route 1, right, or coming from kind of the Fort Belvoir area. But I really feel like 95 is the big issue. But they would be on 95. And I'm not sure if it's premature to say if I've seen 95 pieces kind of working or not. I think when it started out, everybody was a bit confused. Well, just the comment that I had was that when you do get on, it's kind of that dotted line like it's going to get an exception, even though it's like a 3-mile stretch. So they could have made it with wider standard lines and then dotted somewhere down the line. I think in general people come a little more used to it. And I do feel it is making a difference, personally. I don't go on it daily, but I don't know what everybody else's experience is like.
And I would say though, in addition to that, one is not as bad. Really, I mean, I travel it twice a day, and
it's not because the improvement south of you.
Yeah.
And if they can just deal with the bridge, the effect bridge here,
yeah.
I think that would be a really another huge improvement. But I'm not sure that improves it for us. It improves it for those people who are on the one to get south of us. So, you know, sometimes you think that maybe it's okay to be clogged up so people don't come, you know, through here. But I know that's not the answer. But the people that will benefit are the people who are coming through that area. Which might be okay as well if we can do things like, you know, perhaps turn some plots around and fronting ourselves towards the road, Armistead, Station Boulevard, things in there.
So I still think in my resident head that we need to do improvements on those roads. Improvements on, I say who's on.
Those would have no E on it.
And I know the county, you know, the county will do that, we've looked at that for years, but if anything's going on 95, then people take the parkway and then they take Hose to 123, you know, so that gets blocked up, South Run gets blocked, you know, so it's kind of all these places. Station widening like Silverbrook, in that little section, it's very rare that it gets backed up, but if something's going on in the area and the helicopters are out, it's going to be that way. So,
Yeah, right. I saw 4 helicopters flying in formation, right? We held one.
that's regular, this is an exercise.
But we did participate in the helicopter study about transit, about noise and that. And we found out that the Army reduced the number of flights there. We also found out that the Army is 1/6 of the helicopters stationed there. So the rest of the people that were involved in that committee did not necessarily sign on to the reduction of flights. So when you have other groups that have all sorts of acronyms, they still fly in and out of there at their leisure and need. And it sounds like it, and I'm not going to go into the Department of the Army, but they actually did promise to reduce flights, but the others did not.
It's a common day.
The noise.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible. I mean, like, yeah, it is really bad. Like, you can't even go outside sometimes for that. It's constant.
Sorry to that. Let's go to the next. We're getting a lot of stuff that I think is also in these slides. It's really good conversation, so keep it moving. So we mentioned obviously the gateway before, and identifying areas where future growth can be guided at sufficient development levels to support the siting of the future BRT, which is bus rapid transit station. So I have up here a graphic. This is from one of the earlier planning documents that was done. It helps move along work that's happening north in the corridor. It was a study by an alternatives analysis that was done by a number of agencies led by the Virginia's Department of Rail and Public Transportation. As you can see here, they highlighted several different colors. With a light blue, Huntington and Hydro Valley, they call that phase 1. Sort of a medium blue, Hydro Valley or Belmont, they call that phase 2. And that is what the county envisioned as embark. There's an embark Richmond Highway process, which I know several folks here worked on. And that took it all the way, they sort of planning for VRT all the way down to Fort Belmont. So that was phase 1 and phase 2. The county's working on now. They do, I think, headed towards implementation, which is awesome, I think. The phase 3 segment, which is at Fort Belmont and Woodbridge, that dark navy blue color, that's sort of where we are. We land somewhere in that line. Just to quickly, it's a very long report, but what this has been almost 10 years, but what the study found was that you wanted to focus be competitive for federal funding. That was a big component of what they saw in terms of not just planning for it, but eventually implementing it, right? Was you wanted to have areas of high populations and employment. You wanted to be connected to the regional transit network. Those are the biggest factors. So in that northern end, you obviously have the regional rail line. You have essentially more people in development, which is why the report found that those phase 1 and 2 segments would be most competitive for federal funding. County saw that. They thought, let's go with these first 2 phases. Phase 3 will be less competitive. That was the finding at the time. That's likely still the case based on current land uses. It's density, less people, less places, no real connection to that regional rail line. So their assessment was for that phase 3, that again, segment, Fort Belmont, Woodbridge, that's something the county could potentially fund themselves, but it would maybe not be very competitive for other agencies, federal agencies to help with. So with that in mind, one of the things we're doing here, with you all, is about land use changes, right? What moves the needle in terms of making it go from less competitive, which is a very nice way of saying, to more competitive, right? Or something that you want to pursue potentially, right? So that's something to keep in your mind. So I guess my point with this slide is that I don't want there to be the idea that it's guaranteed that VRT would be extended, right? The study that sort of initiated the work that the county's doing found that this phase would be not competitive based on the current land uses. That can change. That's one of the things we're talking about here, right? So that's something to keep in mind. I do have sort of the reference where the study, the red dots are what the DRPT study, again, that's almost 10 years old at this point. I'm sure some of the work was initiated more than 10 years ago, cited, and you can't really see here, but basically it's right near Pohick, within the historic church, so we don't think that would make a lot of sense. And then I think Armistead is another stop they had, and then farther south, so that's where they roughly space these out. My understanding is there was some thought put into this, but maybe again, this is alternative analysis. So we did this when we worked on the Route 1 corridor. Once you actually dive into the corridor and you start to look at available right-of-way and things like that, you're going to refine those stationary locations. So that's something that the task force I just wanted to reference had sort of weighed in on, and our notes were that basically their recommendation was to move in, if we did have these transit stations in the future, we should recommend it being Lorton Road, and then I believe basically where we are today, right? The community center, libraries, and then Lorton Road. Makes sense to me. Again, will be a very long process to get this BRT in the future. So just wanted to touch on that. And again, highlight some of the findings that were done in the studies that help initiate that phase 1 and 2 effort. And so the challenges you might have extending it. Now, I did talk to Graham last week. I myself was not aware of Prince William's stance on extending it, and they would be, I think, a very necessary partner to have an end node to connect to, right? In Woodbridge, right? And so I believe they are now, and I think they've been on the fence, either one side or the other at various times, but I think now they're on the side that they would like some sort of high capacity transit system, maybe VRT to Woodbridge. So that's a good thing, I think, in terms of potentially this area getting that extension. Having an end node would be critical.
What would you view as the, you know, we never travel north up to Lorton. I don't know if anybody else here goes out to this type of schools you work at. What's your destination?
Normally I'm going up to, the Costco up there, or, I'm taking that
Sorry, Costco up near, Thurman.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
You don't know that? I don't know you. You like that?
It's good.
It's less people.
That's there,
Yeah.
yeah, and then, the pet small, further down the road. I did, yeah.
Yeah, that was a very big effort.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of work that went into that. It's not easy to do, and then we've had conversations with the trans office and VDOT about Route 123 and the speeds out there. It's not really in the study area here, so it's close by, and there's a lot of challenges. Other folks know more about it, but yeah, it's a big effort. Now, one of the things that goes into the contributing factor into getting that is a comprehensive plan. It's like, hey, we want more people here. We want this to be an area where people feel safe walking. We want to change the vision for this area, and then VDOT will consider that as part of that. You know, when they think about reducing the speed limit, they'll look at something like that, like a comprehensive plan document.
So what is the speed limit right now, right out here in Fremont, like, adjacent to where we are, parallel to where we are?
It's 45, 45, like you said. 60. Yeah, I would get 65.
Question, you mentioned to get that federal money, that you really look at areas, higher population, employment. Are they looking at opportunities, like, I think some of the tourists that nobody else has, that we have?
I don't know exactly what formula, off the top of my head, it would be. I believe it is basically plan the jobs and population, right? So you say we're going to have X number of people and X number of living here and X number of people working here. And you get that number high enough and they go, okay, that's great, that's enough people.
Do they count in Woodbridge? Because it's my understanding they're doing a massive development down there that's going to increase their population, which increases our roads.
Right, well it would be done, I believe, as a full segment, right? You want to have a logical endpoint that's connected to the current endpoint for development. So whatever, that's why I was saying, Woodbridge would be, and county would be on board as well. You need to have, obviously, like you're saying, more population there. There does need to be population in between, but I don't know what that threshold is. But that would be another effort out of the county.
Ultimately, as ridership, the federal government's going to want to see forecasted ridership that would show that the BRT would be sustainable and viable. And if they don't see that sustainable and viable ridership, then they're going to be less likely to give us the hundreds of millions of dollars that they gave us for the northern segments. But you're absolutely correct. I think Woodbridge would be a critical cog in that. I think maybe, and we've been talking about increasing density a little bit at Dunstan Plaza. I think that would help. I don't know if there's a lot of opportunities in between. I know we started talking about the industrial areas. But I think ultimately, FDA will just want to see ridership before they invest their funds.
So I think don't want to get too deep into it, but that was to sort of say, hey, obviously, I don't know, you know, are aware of sort of the background of these studies, but that's where we are, you know, today, right? We have these studies, they've helped us get phase 1 and phase 2 off the ground, they've identified a challenge in this area. So while it is potential, it's not a certainty. So there's any guarantee you get the element of discuss on this.
But one thought there, on the point too, this gets into the question of population or destiny. Are you creating a larger community, or are you creating a place that people want to go to? What do you want to get at? And what do you
Good balance of things as well. When we were looking in the northern parts of the corridor, we were calling it accident density.
Yeah.
It was population plus jobs per acre, and we were aiming for, I forget, it was 30 people plus jobs per acre, and it could be a combination, it could sway one way or the other, but I think we're mostly looking for balance.
Yeah. I think if you get to a certain point, right, you begin a dialogue with your partner agencies, when you start to talk about what you want to do, and you can paint that picture, and if it is sort of place or the
in probably look at similarities and differences. Farther north, you have a lot of older, open retail centers that are ripe for redevelopment, that you don't have now. So how you look at that, maybe you get your checklist of what works best for other things.
Yeah. Personally, I think residential is a little bit, residential and point south will give you more ridership in the peak direction in the peak period. So in the morning, you want to have that big rush of people going into the DC core. In the afternoon, you want them coming home. Right? So I think it is still good to have a balance, but residential will help your peak direction ridership a little bit more.
Anyone have anything else on the BRT? So ensure the land use pattern is supported by a balanced network of well-maintained roads, pedestrian, biking facilities, and transit system designed to accommodate safety and access. So I read this myself. Wow, that's a great, really general statement. Like it's good. It covers all the bases. We want all the land use to work well with the roadway network, and call back to sort of how we started the conversation this evening. The policy plan also calls for a balance between land use and transportation. So this is language that would absolutely be in line with the greater county goals, right? We want a balance. Now, what does that mean, right? When I hear that, we want all things to work well, I kind of go, well, that's hard. You can have something working well, but oftentimes it's at the cost of something else not working as well. So when we start talking about basically roads, bike and ped facilities, transit, all these things, those are different modes, what we call modal options or modes of transportation.
So, John, as we have biking, as Ken noted tonight, with the scooters there, right? Does that fall under biking, or do we create
I would put that under emerging technology myself. Yeah, I would say it's one of those things that's kind of like, it's newer. You know, it could be the CAV, the connected autonomous vehicle type of thing. It could be, apps. It could be Uber and Lyft is huge. I mean, they're not as big anymore, but there's all these things that are popping up. But I would say it's in there. Could be under biking.
the trails thing? And earlier, this was in my head, and we kind of got onto the
Flip back, or
what's that?
should I flip back to that?
No. It's pretty far back. My comment is that we've got like some really great trails in the general area, and what, in my opinion, we lack is just the connection. In a lot of cases, it's little tiny things like Hovick Road and stuff like that. But this scooter thing we're talking about, and walkability of trails and stuff like that, is there a place, or should we look at, as a task force, a map of the trails and know what the plans are for them, and say, this needs to connect here, that needs to connect there, because that's what we're trying to make is a walkable community, and we're missing, frankly, little pieces in a lot of these situations. I mean, you can basically go from 1.3 to
the tip of Mason Network trails, except for a couple like half-mile connections, or literally quarter mile.
Right.
Is that something, I mean, I think it's something that we should at least take a peek at, a map, and say, walkability, can we prioritize these things? And, you know, frankly, maybe somebody's already done the work and we don't even know, or I don't know. Well, but
So I'm sure other guys are going to weigh in. My personal opinion, my thought when I think had that slide up before, was that this is a potential one. That we've done this in other areas where you sit down with folks that are interested in it and have maybe some thoughts and knowledge that want to go, hey, can I look at the map and sketch out some stuff that makes sense to me? And then we take that back and keep that into, I would think, in this case, the active Fairfax plan, which is kind of what committee, which is looking for and are surveying specific areas of the county, trying to get that kind of information. So task force members are interested in it, having time to work on it, would like to do that. I don't know if we're going to use full task force time, or I'd be happy, you know, others haven't planned this out yet, but if you wanted to have a meeting or two with a subcommittee or a small group to do that, I'd be happy to help with it. Why not? Whatever the task force members.
I deal with the whole task force that I'll participate in this, but also.
Obviously, whatever the group feels like.
Just thinking it out loud a bit here, but it's a travel to other cities, it's a lot of times like a welcome center that has this type of information. I don't know one of Fairfax County, does that CDOT have a resident section, or does the county supervisor's office have a place where somebody go to work, and where the trails also even move?
Well, yeah, honestly, if you think there are offices which are like fairly small,
Yeah.
I'm sorry? City government centers, there's two offices on by Legato, Centerpoint 1 and 2. They're right across from Fairfax Town Center, which has the TJ Maxx and the Safeway cinema. Anyway, we're right there. And if you came to that office, we have stuff, planning documents, we have planners, if you want to. I mean, now,
We have a trail map.
we do, yeah, we have trails, we can pull up on our laptop, things like that.
You can also go into the county has a great mapping system. You can go in and look at any map you could ever imagine. We also, one of the most popular items that we have when we're at events are the bike maps. People, we can't keep enough of them. So if you need something, let us know.
Thinking how where we could promote, like what the was talking about is our local things. You know, like there's no like Lorton .com. Maybe it's not taken yet. But especially in the core, I mean, some of the bigger connections are kind of easy, and some of them are always prioritized. But in the core, are they on the books, and what are their priorities, and how do they serve our purpose here? And that information already exists. That's great. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, we have a countywide trails plan that would have whatever's planned currently that is being updated. I don't think there's priorities necessarily associated with this at this point. That's sort of determined regularly, 4-year intervals or so.
We have the transportation priorities plan, or TPP. It's kind of like a 6-year capital improvement plan that's focused on transportation.
Right.
And it's been stagnant because of the lack of funding. So I don't think many parties could add to it. I'm pretty sure there's a component.
Yeah, that would be in there. I guess I was thinking like the trails map is not going to have like, is it a high?
Yeah,
but you'd see what's planned, right? And that's, we've done that in other areas where we have community members or task force members that kind of look at the map and go, hey, this makes sense, this makes sense, this makes sense, this is great, maybe something here, maybe a connection here, right? And you just put that suggestion in there, and stuff happens. So I think it's a great idea. Again, you all can, decide what you'd like to do, and happy to work with anyone that would like to do that. So to get back to this idea of modal options, or modal considerations, right? Walking is great. I think in general, promotes better quality of life, healthy communities. It can be more than recreation. It can reduce auto trips if you have people living right there where they work. They don't have to get in their car. That's an amazing thing. Biking again can reduce auto trips, can be more than recreation. A lot of times it is for recreation, but it can reduce some trips. Driving, I don't think is ever going to go away. It's efficient, it's comfortable, it's what we're most familiar with. Transit can be more than commuting. I think I've heard some of that idea of local circulation. As opposed to just saying, hey, I live in Lorton and I want to get to DC. Okay, I live in Lorton and I want to get around Lorton, right? So some kind of local, smaller type of transit circulation system helps you. And then emerging technologies, touched on that earlier, I think. We don't know what they are. It's one of the things we don't know. Maybe I'll have another slide on this later, but I guess one of the points here is that it's great that all these things can work well together, but they don't always. It's very hard to make them all work well together, and I say that because if you're in your car and you're driving and there's a lot of people trying to cross the road, you're going to have a hard time making your way down that roadway. Same idea if you're on a bus and there's a lot of people doing stuff in that same roadway traffic. If you want cars to go quickly down a roadway, you don't want a lot of people there. So there's trade-offs. I just say keep that in mind. There's always going to be trade-offs with the mode you choose. That being said, having an idea of what you want to promote in the quarter can be very helpful for getting specific projects advanced. If you say, we really want people walking here, then you can focus on that. You can look to slow traffic down. You can look to potentially reduce lanes. You can look to build up the streetscape and do really cool things to make it more comfortable for people walking. So, open to the whole list of things, but the idea is to think about potentially some modal focus in association with corridors or areas of Lorton, right? So, okay, this is the big one. Establish Lorton Road as a local service boulevard through streetscape and urban design. This is actually building a lot of stuff we've already been talking about. Improve pedestrian comfort and safety, include wider walkways and landscape medians, improve wayfinding, signage, and lighting, public art, street trees that encourage the development of the core. It's a well-connected destination rather than a capstone. So, we've been talking a lot about Lorton Road. It's very important to this community. And I think a lot of these things can be accomplished. Before getting into that, though, I did want to step back, and this is another callback to the county policy plan, right? So, as mentioned before, we do have this what we call functional classification of roadways. I won't go into this in too much detail, but the idea is that the roadways, the higher capacity roadways, are expected to function in a certain way to keep people moving about their business. So on Lorton Road, how we would expect it to work is we'd expect it to carry about an even mix of local and through traffic, right? So it's intended to not be at this time a local only corridor. It is connects to the national highway system, it connects to the interstate. So it is intended to carry some through traffic. It was approximately a mix of local and through. We do expect it to link collectors, which are so a lower capacity roadway with the higher capacity roadway, like Route 1 or the interstate, things like that. So we want it to connect, like Little Station Boulevard, for instance. We want it to connect that. So people come down Little Station Boulevard, get on the Lorton Road, and then go out to these major roadways. We expect to form a significant function transportation network, and then it would closely approach principal arterial in terms of traffic characteristics. That's basically today how we expect it to function, right? And I know that's the task force has expressed for several years. It's not how it should function, right? So I've got to be clear. And according to the county's policy plan, this is how we expect it to function. So what I have here at the bottom is a graphic, which is from another department, Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation document. It is their multimodal system design guidelines. What this is, what that document is something that we use in other areas where we're trying to build around transit, where we're trying to create a place, where we're trying to build up density and put people and have things function in a more urban feeling environment, right? Where you have higher density, you have taller buildings, more people, more stuff going on, right? And so there's a whole guide essentially put out by Virginia's Department of Public Transportation that will step you through how to plan one of these types of areas. Doing that, once you go through that process of identifying how you want this area to grow in a multimodal way, DDOT, the Virginia Department of Transportation, who manages the roads, basically has said, okay, we'll accept that. We'll let you do things that we wouldn't normally do on roadways if you have a plan for it and your land uses match up with your vision for the area and you want this area to change. We understand. We can do things that are not sort of typical of what you would do elsewhere, right? Where you're not planning for higher densities and taller buildings and more people and more active places. So again, I'm not going to go through too much of that tonight, but I just want to put that on the radar that that's a potential avenue or boulevard to achieve your goal of transforming Lorton Road, right? Is to go through this process of identifying how this area could become a multimodal center or one of the other various levels that they have in there, for types of areas that could apply this type of treatment to a roadway. Again, when I saw this, I went, wow, this looks like something that everyone's talking about. It's got the trees, it's got the streetscape, it's got the taller buildings, it's got the planted median, and so on, right? So that's at least one thought I had was sort of how to approach or crack that, so to speak. The issue of you have this road that's currently functioning sort of how it should, but you want to do something different, right? So that's one thought I had. Obviously, we can follow more information about that if it's of interest. So that's it for the transportation-related visioning statements. I want to go through sort of briefly next steps, and then we'll obviously have more time to discuss it, go through after talking. But basically, what we wanted to do is continue the transportation assessment. Like I said, we do have a consultant on board, HNTB. They're very good. They've been working with us on assessing existing conditions, future, we call it future baseline. Now, I guess maybe I should briefly describe the work that we're doing so you'll have some sense of what to expect. We would like to come back at future meetings, report back to you on what we're looking at. We are assessing not just one roadway. We are going to look at impacts to the larger transportation network. The way we do that is, like I said, we start with the existing conditions. We kind of see how things are functioning today. Gives us somewhat of an indicator of how we think they might function in the future. When we say a future baseline, what that means is we basically look at what's currently planned for roadways, what's currently planned for land uses. We have transportation modeling software that we use that helps us sort of understand if we build the things that we're planning to build, and we, in terms of transportation network, and we build the people, the places that we expect to be in the future are there. What does that look like? So we don't do anything with this process. We don't change the land uses, and we don't change transportation recommendations in the comprehensive plan. What can we expect this area to feel like in terms of transportation system, how it functions? When I say function, I mean delay in terms of how long will it take to get through traffic lights, some things like that. How crowded the roadways be, the volume, capacity for roadways, things like that. So it basically just gives you an idea about how future conditions, if you make those changes, would be. Next thing we would do is look at future conditions if we have to go through land uses, right? So as part of this process, I assume there'll be some new recommendations for density changes. What kind of impacts will they be? So we'll look at the plan, transportation network, and the proposed land uses. We'll assess that. And then we'll basically work with you all and our consultant to identify potential mitigations. In other words, if putting these new people in places here causes issues, overcapacity, too much delay, other problems with the network, what can we do to potentially mitigate that? And then also, what can we do to improve the network as a whole based on the changes we want to make with the land? So that is a very sort of short rundown of what we'd like to, I'd like to talk about this.
I just want to jump in real quick. We are also looking at bicycle pedestrian medium. So we're looking at what is we call pedestrian level of comfort. How comfortable is it for people to walk around Lorton? Bicycle level of traffic stress. How comfortable is it to bicycle around Lorton? And so a lot of the solutions, a lot of the mitigation that John mentioned, won't just be the roadways and the intersections, but it's going to be moving on-road bicycle lanes to separate it or buffered, making the sidewalks wider, creating streetscapes that make it a lot more comfortable. So I just want to make sure, and we're going to look at transit too. A big focus is the autos, but we're definitely shifting to more of a multimodal approach in general. And our area cities are now looking much more closely at bicycle pedestrian.
Yeah, I should highlight that comment.
So John, as we look at these different assessments and mitigating and trying to improve and taking traffic off of Lorton Road and mitigating it, so what goes into the study in terms of getting a readout to look at putting another accident on?
That other than that, right. I don't have a good answer for that. I think that we do work closely with VDOT. If we have recommended changes that we want to bring forward and put into the plan, we certainly would, work with them on that so they understand what we want to do.
So we look at close to public roads or north of the Lorton exit, having another, because the exit at the Fairfax County Park was absolutely too far north for folks that want to get to the community. And we're making all the Lorton Road the gathering for the community, but still the folks that live in the immediate neighborhood and traveling by vehicle, they want to get to their development without waiting in long lines. And if we slow Lorton Road down too much, we can have a backup on Route 1. So,
Right. So I think to me, what you do is you build your case, right? You say we want this area to change. We thought about it. We want to put this type of land use here. We're going to put people here, new buildings, new residences, whatever. And we want to support that land use change with these types of transportation improvements. And here's how we think they'll help the overall network. So you build your case, right? And that'll be part of the transportation assessment.
as we travel south on 95, we go to Stafford, Scotland County, that you see these new exits. These new exits coming out there. And which is, and it's neat, like, you want to get done. So here, I don't know, as we have visited, we didn't go to the short side, so we would take us on that exit.
Walker, when you're saying that, are you envisioning like exit ramps potentially on public road or something totally new, or just paving your exits? Is that
Exit ramps are like public road, because what we have to the east, it's the industrial, right? Can't do much to the west side, it's more residential.
Right.
But on the eastern side is more industrial land, that's what they're building.
I'm sure you get some community opposition to that. Frankly, I think it's an extremely logical thing. But, does anybody know if it meets the standards for distance from Lorton Road?
Yeah.
And I ask that question because if it does, maybe it's easier to achieve. And frankly, I don't see how it could totally benefit all of these traffic issues that we're talking about. Spreading out the traffic a little bit more, giving different options.
Because I think that we're taking Lorton Road from 1 to 123 to jump on 95. I think it's on 95. And people on Howick typically get off the back of the road. I do that usually. And I think that, and on the other side of Howick, it takes you to Hughes Road, so it doesn't get you down south of 95. I think that's on 95.
So we look at as well, because there was a long-term resident in Springfield Road to the corner of Oak Road and 11 Road, and just right off on that road, straight down.
wondering if you're looking through some.
I was just going to say, John mentioned the travel demand forecasting tools that we have. We could actually plug in interchanging on point, and we can kind of run it, and we can get a high-level sense of whether the traffic would actually shift in a way that's beneficial for you. And or we can rule it out because we don't see that.
Right, that was my thought. There'll be a process we try to iteratively determine things that might help, right? We'll see where the problems are, and then we try and plug in things that might help fix those problems. For the analysis.
I think you're under potential mitigations and improvement. This is what you think, I'm not sure myself. We keep trying to mitigate, if not eliminate, traffic through this community, on Lorton Road or whatever it is, to somehow make it more of a walkable sense of place. The challenge is you have so much traffic that may be impossible. Okay? So you're going to look for improvements and mitigations, which is good, and that'll be very a good component of what you've got. I'm wondering if we can't look at if you can't also look at a secondary internal network, not just bike lanes or something, but other ways of getting through here that doesn't mix or intersect too much with the main roadways, so that you can create that safe, walkable, shuttleable system within the community area, and still, because we can't take traffic from 95 and block it from getting off the board. We can't do that. We can't really slow down the progress as we see more and more traffic heading, to and from Princeton. So is there a potential for mitigation that allows for an internal roadway or network of some sort? We're talking about bike lanes, we're talking about, walkways and stuff. Can we do something that has more shuttle orientation or even a small car or, a small component there within here, so that we're not bound by those main roads?
Right.
Is that possible? And maybe it's not. I was wondering if you could.
My first thought is that typically what we would do, and what we did on Route 1 is when we have this sort of higher density densification of areas, potential British streets, like if you look at Route 1 where you have those transit stations, they sort of are points that feed off of Route 1 into these higher density developments, and that's where traffic would circulate off of Route 1, right, to a certain extent. Obviously, you can't have all your access points on Route 1 for any through quarter. And as short as Lorton Road is, you wouldn't want to add a lot of access to it, I don't think. So if Gunston Plaza or Lorton Station or anywhere else densifies, then, build that local roadway network around it, makes a lot of sense to me. I think that would be a sensible approach. I did want to jump back. I'm sorry for jumping the line here, but I wanted to make this point about trade-offs, right? I think the idea that we have a really beautiful, walkable, shaded, comfortable, well-landscaped corridor on the road with no traffic on it is really, to me, a hard concept, because its location and sort of how it functions today, right? That being said, I think when you start to add those elements, when you add the trees, when you add the people, when you add the activity, that naturally causes traffic to slow down, right? So that being said, so you might have slower traffic on the road. So people that want, I know I'm jumping back there, but 3 years ago, I forget how long, one of the big comments we heard was fix the PM peak traffic on Lorton Road. In the afternoon traffic, it's terrible. So making it a beautiful place with a lot more people and a lot more stuff and a lot more activity might make the traffic worse, right? It might make it slower. It might make it more comfortable for people that live here, people that are coming in. The other thing I think I wanted to get to is that the idea is that if you make a really cool place, you can't really gate it too much. You're gonna, if people want, if you have a really nice area, you build it up, you guys love it, you normally would attract people from outside as well, right? That's just a natural function of how people work. They're going to go, oh, well, that place is cool. I want to go check it out. And then so you're going to have this additional traffic and these other people coming in from the outside. So that would also potentially make traffic conditions, just the roadway traffic conditions worse. But it could make it, again, busier, more active, more vibrant place for people to walk and live and so on. So there are trade-offs.
You know, I always think that downtown is normally a little slower and you're not going to go that fast.
Yeah.
And so it's not a problem if I was in a downtown. What I find is problematic is I don't have to be downtown and I can't get from one to the other. And I'm not even going to, there's nothing I can get there. Everything I want to get to is somewhere else. And I've got to go through the same, and it's not even, you know, my fellow Lortonites, it's somebody else, and I'm just as a project, you know, for customers and everybody else. Ultimately, everybody's going to have their phone, and it's going to have their ways on or whatever. You're going to say, yeah, this way is here's a little quicker that way, and then they're going to get to the Lorton Road thing, and it says, okay, it's a little more trafficy over here. It's a little slower, and I can see that's going to slow me down. So I'm going to find this like on the faster way. And that, I think, is what we're sort of looking for. Is that, and I'm happy to be in traffic the rest of you guys.
Just two things to throw out there. One of the things we've had, and it was taken away from us, and that is, as you're traveling I-95 south in the Parkway, we used to have an exit into the level that was a lot closer than it is now. When I traveled north before places, and it's like, really, I gotta get up here. Like, I want to get closer to where it was. We had it, and it got taken away. And I believe at the time, I think I was transportation chair at that. This question was asked, and the answer was, nobody's going to work. Oh, wow. So, that's one that, you know, you look at that, you know, people that are taking 95 and get off into the local and closer than where it's right now, fairly far north of all the road exit. The other one I know we kind of, as far as historic was asked, was looking of that area, this way. You can get on 95 south down there, you cannot get on 95 north. So your two options are to, yes, I'm right through here, and have Wendy's house. And sure if you like it, people would rather be able to get down there, or you would have the 123 and then go to that corridor, which is at the slow between kind of slow down. Traffic one. That was talked about historically, you know, I talked about it anyway. Basically going Route 1 south, just go to Route 1 north. So it's right underneath that right underneath the railroad tracks there. And the added benefit to that, of course, is getting some of the truck traffic from industrial out of the core here, getting it right on 95. But and North Plains was one of the ones that was like transportation and stuff like that. And so you guys say, no, we're not going to do that the traffic in the southern border was the logic that is used to not consider that at all. So, I mean, I would clearly be an advocate for anything that promoted getting trucks out the core of Lorton. Play out and they got come through. And I'm not sure those industrial folks down there, do you know when they're going down Western Cove Road in general?
They do. You have the bus station, they'll come up out of the bus station area and go down on Dunstan Road.
And then what the biggest industry,
Right.
trucks and that. So Christine and
Just one thing I wanted to clarify, when they closed the Hotland that came into Lorton, they had added the one down by MGA. And the reasoning for that was all those people, 6,000 people that were going to be working in MGA would be able to come out. And they got rid of the Lorton one because for federal highways, they were too close together. So at the time, Supervisor Highland, Delegate Alvo, sent in multiple letters to have them consider that, and federal highways would not.
I'm pretty sure the Lorton population is larger than 6,000 people.
I think there might have been some homeland security things going on there as well that they couldn't speak to, but
And
I agree with all the statements that you said, and all the comments earlier. I think like currently understanding that Lorton is supposed to be like that connection thing. But I believe that the traffic will slow down when we have something for them to stop and take in the essence of Lorton, because we do have the Amtrak and we have the BRE. And so right now, like the BRE, everything, all they see is the BRE, all the stores and everything on their back. So they just park their cars and go. Right? So I believe, and they're paying attention. We have this median on Lorton Road that no trees. And when they're doing, but when they're doing that study, especially when you're in the focus area, you'll see that the walkable area between where we are now to Silverbrook is not the same. It's a gap, it's missing. Just the area, the scapes, there's gaps. I don't think you can walk from Wendy's area to the Boulder, and then to the point where maybe we want people outside of our community to come, park, and then walk, right, in that triangle area. And so I don't think there's one thing that we can do. I think there's a collective, I think we call them modal things that we can do that's going to slow down the traffic. And the other thing is the timing of crossing the street. That is like, well, I know I dated myself, but on this side, it's like Crawford. And then also on the other side, the arcade game property. Other thing I'll say is when they have lanes, and then making sure that it's lit up, the walkways, spending that money to have the caution signs that drivers know that this is a walk lane. But sometimes when you're walking, you don't make it back before the sunset. So, those are some things.
I'd say absolutely a lot you can do to make the corridor itself, more comfortable for everyone besides the car. Make the car less comfortable. And we work in other areas where we have a lot of density, or we want more people walking or on the street, so to speak. There's a trade-off. We'll go, okay, well, we need to accept that traffic's going to get worse. That's just the trade-off, right? Because there's only so much green time that's available for any one person to cross the street, whether it's a car or a person. So as you give more of that time away to the pedestrian, the car has to sit there longer, right? So that's that trade-off we're talking about. So as you encourage other modes and you build this area up and make it more active and more vibrant, understand that means you're going to have slower moving car traffic, which is going to be more comfortable for pedestrians.
A couple of things. First of all, I believe in integration of a concept, and when you can't tell you're entering Fairfax County, when you come over the river, you really don't know where you are. So you really, what's the care? I think that has to happen at the Quan River Bridge, but with the same design then instituted on up the corridor and on in Lorton. If you go up Route 1, you see some beautiful signs at the hills, down Springfield, and they're all integrated in the same design up there. And those should be the same thing at Colgate Church, at Lorton, and at Gunston Mason. And those should identify those three separate communities as part of the communities. They're all part of what we're talking about. And I think just simple things like that do create a unifying aspect, and also allows. I saw a beautiful marker at Mount Vernon that was done by fifth graders on a judge that they researched and found. Now, they went to the supervisor's office to get it in and enact the gap. In order to do that, But I really thought that was very clever, and that led them to research their own community, and that was buying it. Those kids still talk about that. Number 3, Angelique and Wendy have 3 times. Ken's mentioned it. I've mentioned it. Other people have mentioned it here, lighting and the design of what it's going to be. I can see murals underneath the 95 overpass on both sides. Stylistic, you know, it can be. I believe in hip hop. I just don't do it anymore. So, I mean, there are things that can track and amplify, but I think you can't get broader. I think that's perfect. You can't get from one side to the other. And I don't care how wide the roads are. And I don't care how many designated lanes for commuters only going to someplace else that we create. You still can't get there. So I do think we're going to have to create a design for pedestrian overpasses that's unified. And it's not in one place. It's in several places now. Now, the reason I say that is then that brings in the opportunity to create a stylistic design that talks about Lorton and a motto or an image or something that is there on those overpasses. And I know VDOT doesn't like overpasses, but I don't like VDOT identifying a high-speed urban corridor up 123 that makes it 55 from there all the way to Bird Lake Road. And then it drops to 50 until you get to the Parkway. Then it drops to 45 until you get to Zion Road, but we got to 35 in front of the Fairfax County. You have to watch how you turn in there because people were concerned. When I dive into that issue, I'm sitting there going like, why isn't it a high-speed urban corridor, 55 damn miles an hour all the way up there, and people turn at their own leisure, you know what I mean? But that's not the way VDOT thinks. I'm so glad that you guys keep throwing VDOT, because the average citizen struggles with it.
No, I understand. I absolutely hear you concerned about the pedestrian.
And I didn't mean to track Tom and you on the speed limit. But if you look at the integration of Prince William County, and it's 25 in Dumfries, but then 35 to get a little farther up north as you're coming up and you're in front of the car dealerships. And then with the new development is going to remain 35, where it's at 40. In order to cross over the bridge, and then it's at 55, and then where it's going to be 50 in over for Belvoir. There is an integration piece here that is not synchronized well. So concept, design, unifying theme, and then, yeah, I know crossovers are expensive. I'm not caring. I know that's horrible to say, but in order to make this work and create a community within.
I hear you. I just a couple points. Comprehensive plan and the county we have no authority over speed limits. Unfortunately, so I do hear your concern. We do talk to the state when we have issues like on 123, other areas of the county. Obviously, Route 1 got their speed limit change based on some planning work that we did. So we have that capacity to talk to them about it, but it's a conversation. We don't have any authority to change the speed limit ourselves. In terms of pedestrian overpasses, I will say just it's not a best practice. No, I understand. And again, not my area of expertise. We have really good. I'm sorry. Yes. Again, not my area of expertise, but my understanding is that they typically are not used. In other words, you build them and no one uses them. They also become, again, they become, can become security and maintenance sort of albatrosses, where you have folks either vandalizing them or doing unseemly things around them or on them, and then you have to keep them up, put them up, and you have to keep them up. So it's a maintenance cost. And the one that I think of also when this comes up, because it comes up in other areas, because it seems like such an easy solution. Oh, just look over the roadway. There's one in the Mason district. Supervisor Gross has spoken about it at length. I can't speak for Supervisor Gross, but my understanding is that it is not done the job that they were hoping it to do. And I think that's a lot of the stories you hear about these overpasses, especially overpasses. But again, I'm not the expert on that. That is my, sort of layman's take on why they're not a best practice.
I have more faith in the staff that's here in coming up with a design and concept that would work.
Right, okay, great. That's so nice that you said, because oftentimes, I really appreciate it when the community goes, this is what we want. You guys figure out how to do it. This is our vision. We want this area to look like this, and feel like this, and function like this. You tell us how we can get there, and that'll be good. When you sort of put that cart before the horse, so to speak, say, do this because we want this. Doesn't always. Anyway, this is good.
I was going to say, can I piggyback a little bit here? I was in a meeting earlier today and learned, tell me if this is true, that in 2026 we should have hourly VRE.
Hourly?
Somebody that I know whose husband's involved in transportation with VRE. And if that's the case, I lived in New Jersey a long time. I think it has the potential to transform this entire area to a very different place. I mean, where I live, people move there to walk. They want to see those scooters. They want this big downtown.
Yeah.
We don't have enough VRE people that can't sustain a little downtown. But we already see some problems, and you guys did come in because there was somebody who was still crossing this boulevard, Lorton Station Boulevard, you see it, it's pretty wide. And to our community center meeting, Dan was there, Dan Stork was there, and the person from VDOT, and some of their suggestions honestly wasn't too keen on. And it goes on what you're stating here. So I'm going to give you guys the intellectual property, figure it out here. So what they were saying is to put in my opinion, I love the lane bike path. There's no way I'm going to get on this little tiny bike thing with a laser next to me where you have to play throttle across the street to go to, and risk my life on this tiny little thing that's not separated from traffic.
Okay, yeah.
And they had suggested that we did to slow Lorton Station Boulevard. And the residents in my community said no. And they didn't like that because they do see the volume of traffic that leaves from the VRE, which I see potentially as a boom for us. We need that to sustain it. So how do we make some of those shoulders wider so we can have scooters, we can have, you've been to Austria, you've been to other places where they've got great bike lanes that, you're not living behind your back waiting for the laser to kill you. Right. So how do you do that? Can you do that?
I think again, talking about practice, and best practice is always evolving. So when I started working as a planner, I was in New Orleans, and we wanted to push Katrina, and we had all this opportunity to rebuild the roads because they got smashed, right? And the best practice at the time is to do sharrows. Sharrows are basically a bicycle sign on the roadway that says share the road with a bicycle. So we put those in many places we could. Fast forward, present day, you don't want to do sharrows, right? We want, and I believe, again, practice is evolving, but I believe active Fairfax folks are now saying separate, like you said. Make the facility comfortable for as many people as possible. Get riders off of it. Don't design it for the spandex, warriors out there, right? You want kids and grandmas and everybody else to feel comfortable. So you actually do want to get as much space as you can and make it as comfortable for everybody. So I think that's the direction that the active Fairfax folks are going with. And we can inform them as much as we can, but we want that space. We want to offer the facility wherever we can. We don't want to put people on the road. So I think that message is pretty well heard.
I just wonder, and I'm not exactly how transportation sets this in place. However, one of the key components of our vision task force is to sort of brand Lorton. Right now, people think when they say Lorton, what they think of Lorton is not what we all see, and they have this little unique spot, and they go, oh, that's a little dumpy spot over here. And so we really want transportation and a site that actually combines together to say, oh, this is now Lorton, this is what Lorton is, and therefore, in their own mind, they have a different perspective from Lorton.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, and I said this to understand, I think the visioning is the most important part. It's right in the title, right? Come up with the vision. What do you see in the future? Get that out there, promote that, build on that, and that's how you get the actual reality.
So the crosswalk thing, I mean, it seems so obvious, but everything you said, we all see it, we've seen it before, and it makes sense why people don't use them. And I would say walking the incline maybe is the reason not to use them. But I just had this thought, it's not to have all things all wow or whatever. But what would happen if we dropped the main roadway a little bit to keep people from walking across it at all, because it would be a drop down, and your crosswalks would then more be the pedestrian level, and the traffic would be separated from you a little bit by elevation.
And interestingly, they had some of that in Atlanta, been to the baseball stadium in Atlanta. So you got sort of your hotels on one side, and you got professional office buildings, and then the stadium's here, and all of the retail shops, and you got the window on the other side. And you crossing over, is it 95 or whatever? 85, and you're walking, there's no cars driving on the street, and it's not like the bridge that we had that cost 50 back like that. It's really nicely designed, and you can walk, and while I was there for a few days, I could take a walk and do the group over there and back, and not be concerned with the traffic.
So I think that's integrated into the surroundings. The bridge is part of the surroundings.
Correct. And when you get on the stadium side or the shop side, it just flows right into, so there's a little bit of a break to get out of not like what we had at the crossing of the field. So, I don't know. That's a story for another day. But
I'm not a big proponent of poking holes in saying if something's not feasible at this stage, right? So I think any and all ideas are great. I think the feasible or not, that would be determined at a later date. So I don't want to poke holes in any idea.
so we have a comment back here, and then we do that one.
Just a couple quick things, Keisha and Duty comments. When you said it's 2026 for the third rail and possible second platform at the VRE station, that's 2030 for all the VRE. Once they build a new long bridge. But I want to point out how much of a hub the VRE station is, because not only do you have the New York City buses coming down every day, but you also, you live right there, how many vehicles do you see parked in that lot overnight?
A lot.
When I get on the train, I see another people getting off the train, and they keep their cars parked here in Lorton, and they live down in staff, and they live down in this is the northernmost point on the VRE with free parking. Everything north of us, you have to pay. So there is a couple dozen people that I see every day.
That's a good point.
What about the workstation? You have to park there?
I haven't taken the train out today because that's the Manassas line, so it's going out or the west. But I believe the workstation is free parking from when I've gone out to their farmers market.
Okay.
And yeah, for ours being up there and usually pretty empty. You go down the Woodbridge, they have a garage, and it's packed every day. But that's because the Woodbridge station is also an Amtrak station. And that's the only Amtrak station between Fredericksburg and Union Station. Until they expand the Crystal City Station, which they approved $100 million for.
Thanks for that information. So, one comment, I think the goal, I guess, is the ability to get people across Lorton Road. And so, we leave that in your good hands to accomplish that. That's under, lower.
That's the welcome.
So, we have a minute and a half left. And, John, any parting words?
I appreciate your
Very
time.
nicely done.
I look forward to working with you all. Thank you for having me here tonight.
And Stephen, anything else on the side as we look at next steps on the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Clark. For next steps, we're really looking at the next date. As we talked before, there is a plan for a community open house at, here at Lorton Community Center. We've already reserved space. We will be using the library and also the entry space, and with staff from planning and also probably from FCDOT, and there may also be an opportunity for some of the recently made and new contacts with the Virginia Rail Authority to also come. It will basically be it'll be an open house with a lot of information for members of the community to come and learn about not just Lorton visioning, but how some of the other things that are being planned in Lorton may also work kind of hand in hand, kind of inform what we're doing with Lorton visioning, update the comprehensive plan. And again, that'll be set up mainly in the library, but there'll also be some space where for information booths and things of that nature for members of the public to come in and learn. That'll be on July 15th. We were planning to have a preview of the work the consultant, the information that the consultant has been putting together for the community open house on Tuesday, June 20th, but we have been made aware that there are several conflicts. So we're going to now ask the consultants if they can possibly do the meeting on June 26th, another Monday night, 3 weeks from tonight. And what they'll do again is preview the information. I think there's also an expectation that they'll have information to send to the task force members in advance of the meeting. So if we set it back to that following week, when they send the information, we'd like you all to kind of take a look at it, provide us with any glaring issues or omissions you see that you may think they need to change before the information goes out to the community. But with that, there will be some concepts, some that have been developed from the previous discussions that you all have had and reflective of the community vision statement that you all have adopted. All the information that the community, a lot of information the community hasn't been kept up to speed with, but information that we want the task force to hear from and also we need consultants to hear from before we go into the final phases of creating these concepts to show what Lorton would look like. A reclaimed Lorton would look like, from a density standpoint, from land use standpoint, a transportation element, that we want to hear from the community on. A lot of things you all talked about tonight have been great. And I think it's a great start is to further that conversation with the greater Lorton community.
This is a virtual.
The meeting on the 20th or the 26th. Is going to be a virtual meeting. And the reason we're doing it that way is because it'll be easier for you all to look at the information on the screen, on your own screen. You'll have time to view it ahead of time. And also, if the discussion there's a lot of discussion and a lot of feedback that we're hearing that we aren't under a timeline for having to vacate a building. So it'll give you all a lot of time, as much time as you need to kind of workshop with the consultants and the staff on what's being conceptualized to kind of push us to that, to the plan. So.
Okay. Very good. There's nothing else? No further comments? I'll say this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.